Well, hello friends, this here's David Vos. It's good to see everybody today. Well, today I've got a little something on my mind. I was thinking about a unique way of looking at things from a very amazing point of view. You know, 'cause we've been doing a lot of these videos about the elite and all the stuff they're doing to us, and you know how they're taking advantage of us, causing us to go to war, kill one another. You know, they invent religions and then they entice us and then deceive us and get each other to hate each other, make an excuse for one side to kill the other side. You say, well, I don't believe that, Dave. There ain't no elite. Well, there's not too many families that run this world and own every company on this earth. Even if they're not the elite, they have an incentive to take us and put us in the position where we've got to buy their stuff. You know, we've got to, you know, they're not going to be able to continue to keep their power unless they can deceive us into allowing them to rule over us. That's the definition of the elite, those who rule over us and have power over us. In modern days, with Walmart, we have to go there. We have the health care system. A lot of people say, well, that's for us, that's our, you know, so if we get sick, we can go and they'll help us. And they're just people like you and I. They're nurses and doctors. But I've said in one of my other videos, and most of you know this, that one of the most wealthiest elite bankers in the world is David Rockefeller and his brothers. And he actually, you can look this up on Google, do a Google search on this, or you can take my word for it if you want, or you probably already know this, but he has so much money, he's bought up everything. You know, he bought up all the oil companies and everything. Well, he bought up the pharmaceutical companies. He makes a lot of money off of that. You know, some of these pills that they're selling you nowadays, several $100s a day for one pill. And you know, in order to get you to buy these pills, they got to have commercials day in and day out on on television. That tells you something. They're controlling the the richest man in the world owns Geico. That's how he made a lot of his money, because it's a scam, a mafia scam. They lobby government to make it a law that you have to have insurance. And say, well, it's important we have to have insurance because if you hit my car, then sounds good, but they make a lot of money, you know, and it's just something that we have to pay them out of our pocket every month. So now they've gone through this healthcare system. I wonder why? Because now it all goes through insurance, and there's people who run the insurance company, and just like the car insurance, they're making all the money off this insurance. And the thing of it is they would like you to come in and have more procedures because they make more money. So they got to invent diseases. They've got to never cure you because you're their income. This is how the elite controls us now. So we all know this. Rockefeller bought the pharmaceutical companies. He also bought the institutions that test the drugs to see if it's good. So he's got both ends sewed up, and he lobbies Congress. So really, he's got us, you know, sewed up at both ends, and there's nothing we can do about it. So we know all this, right? But I was thinking about this morning, and I said, yeah, I'm going to make a video on this because this is important. A lot of you can see very clearly because we're the ones getting squeezed. So we can see that we're being abused, and we're like, we wake up, we're angry because why do these people do this, or why do we have to do that, or how come I have to pay this, right? All the stress of trying to live, and the elite, they're living high hog in the mountains in a castle. And we say, why does our Father in heaven allow a small group of elite people to rule over the rest of us and destroy our minds and our hearts and keep us down and torture us and keep us in wars, endless wars? They make money off of all the weapons, and anything that could be made money off of, they're going to be doing it. That's why they're making so many prisons now and so many new laws, because the prisons are privately owned and they're making money off of that. That's why they make so much money off. That's why they come and take your children, because for every kid they get more money. That's why they're building all these schools. See, that's for us, right? For our schools. But no, every opportunity they get, they build another school because they get tax dollars, see, per kid, per school, and it just goes to all the bureaucracy, which feeds their little hungry mouths. Alright, but back to the point. Why did our Father in heaven allow this? Good question, isn't it? He's so loving and kind, and he looks down and he sees all these wicked, evil people ruling over other people, innocent people. Have you asked yourself, are you really innocent? I mean, you could look at it that, well, it doesn't matter whether I'm innocent or not. There's got to be some innocent people out there. The world is just filled with all these people. Now, maybe they're not innocent, but you know, these elite, wicked, evil people are educating them and bringing them into this mindset, and they're destroying them from their spirit to their body, outward. And so, it isn't even their fault. They're like children, and they're leading them all astray. Why would our Father in heaven let them lead us astray? Why wouldn't he put up schools and teach people the truth in this world? Why do you let them kill Jesus? Why didn't you let Jesus come and come down here and teach us all how to love and be with us and stay with us, and we could have had his kingdom right here on earth? Well, we always talk about how, well, Jesus offered them everlasting life and then they killed him. They didn't want it. Well, that's an easy way to look at it, right? But it still makes you wonder, there's some people that wanted it. Why didn't Jesus stick around and teach us more? And well, all the way through the Bible, we've talked about this too, how Israel was offered the promised land and they didn't want it. Adam and Eve, Father in heaven gave them everything they could possibly want, and here comes the devil and said, hey, I got a little garden for you, and enticed them and said, you know, come live in this little garden and I'll make you into this form and I'll entice you. And you know, then he brought a serpent and he says, hey, come on. And Adam and Eve was deceived. It says that Eve was deceived. So we're in here because we're deceived, right? Alright, we got that far. But why would our Father in heaven allow the devil to come down there and make a serpent and this beautiful garden and entice us into this, right? Let's just take it down to our day. Here we are, we're poor little peasants trying to make a living, we're little slaves, and he's just sending us to school and putting all this propaganda in our minds, and we don't know what we're doing. But the elite are just reveling in all this, you know, luxury and living in a castle like a, you know, like a king on a high hill. Why would our Father allow this to happen, alright? But I've got a question for you. Isn't it true that our Father in heaven allows this principle? I mean, if our Father in heaven's allowing the elite to rule over us and deceive us, then it's got to be some kind of a principle, right? Some kind of a universal thing that, in other words, he wouldn't pick and choose what he's going to do. Our Father in heaven is not partial, right? He's fair. So if he's going to let the elite do that, wouldn't he have to let us do it? Well, he does. See, you rule over your own little ecological system. The elite, see, they thought they were born to rule over you because you're just a peasant and they're your ruler. Now they're doing bad and they're abusing you and they're going to get their reward. But you also have your sphere of influence. You rule over people. If you're a man, you've probably got your wife and children and you tell them what to do. Maybe you slap your wife around, beat your kids, right? I'm not saying all of you do this, but some of you are saying, well, hey, I was made to be a hunter. And you go out and you say, I'm the man. These are just animals. I can shoot them and I can kill them. I can eat them. I have that prerogative. I have that sphere of influence and I can take that authority because I can. That's what the elite think. Is that, well, we can. That's why we do it. We can manipulate people and make them do whatever we want and they'll just do it. We can rule over them because we've got that power. See, we're using these unrighteous mammon, this unrighteous material wealth that we have. Jesus talked about it as unrighteous mammon. Jesus said that the wicked are more wise with the unrighteous mammon than we are. See, they know how to manage their material wealth. And most of us just don't know how to do that. They're wicked, but they're managing it correctly, and they're turning 10 pieces of coins of silver into 100, you know? And we're just sitting around, well, we don't have that power, so we're being, you know, deceived, and all right, so we're deceived. It's not our fault, and our Father in heaven is letting him do that, and we're complaining. But why would our Father come down here and stop the elite? If he's not going to come down here and stop you from beating your children, or going out every hunting season and killing a deer, mounting its head on the wall. Look at me, I'm a man, I can kill things because I have that power and authority, right? See, a lot of people say, well, the Bible says you can eat meat. But that's not really true. In all of my videos, I've been talking about how there's two gods, two worlds, two systems, two covenants. And this is something that most of Christianity and the rest of the world doesn't know. But the Old Testament is the covenant of Satan. It's the accuser. He accuses us day and night. He writes this law of all these curses and accusations. He's that God that says, I am. It's jealous. He's the ego. And all he sees is himself, and he thinks he's the only one that exists. He doesn't even know about our Father in heaven. And he thinks he's the boss. And he makes all these physical, carnal laws. And we sign under the dotted line. And we have all this guilt. And we're being, you know, accused. And it's really slander because we shouldn't be accused. But we believe and we follow because we want to eat the meat. And he allowed us to have sacrifices and slaughter animals. In fact, it says it was a restful odor to his nostrils. He demanded that we kill animals and feed part of the animal to the priest, and he ate some of the animal sacrifices as well. It was a restful odor to his nostrils. He wanted genocide, war. He's the one, you know, Yahweh Sabaoth. That means the God of war. He taught David to war. That's what it says. He taught my hands for warfare. The book of Psalms. So that God wanted slavery. Women were slaves. You know, you purchased your wife. She had to do everything you said until you died. She was under your law. You were the husband or the owner, Baal. So that was the old covenant. Now we're under the new covenant. And our Father, there's no darkness in union with him, and he wouldn't put up with any of that. In fact, he loved us so much he wanted to deliver us from that system. He sent forth his Son, who came to be under the law because he was born in a human flesh. He was under the law, born a Jew, under the law, and then he kept all the law and died and freed us, purchased us. You know, remember Judas Iscariot threw the 30 pieces of silver into the treasury. He purchased us, and then he went and died. And on that cross it says it's finished, and he conquered every principality, power, and dominion and authority. He freed us. And if the Son of Man sets you free, you're free indeed. And Romans 10:4 says that Jesus was the end of the law. That's it. It's over. It was fulfilled. All things were fulfilled in 73 AD. And it's over. And now it's only, will you believe and receive? Okay, so there's still elite people ruling over us, right? But you're still in that mindset. You're still being deceived. And all you have to do is believe. And you're being given the same opportunity as the elite. You've got your sphere of influence. You know, you run around and you kill animals and you think it's okay. And you don't have any guilty conscience. Well, they don't have a guilty conscience either, because that's the way they were raised. They were raised that they were superior and you were inferior. They were born to rule over you. They're the elite. That's what they were taught. They're wrong, just as you're wrong. Because you see, there were some people in the days of the Apostle Paul who thought that, well, you know, because they were Jews and they thought that they were under the law and the law was lawful and Jehovah was the true God. And he said it was okay to murder. And he said it was okay to kill animals. And he made these animals in form, in the physical form, Yasar, in Genesis chapter 2. Whereas our Father in heaven made the whole creation in Genesis chapter 1 and never allowed anything to be killed or to die, and gave us fruit to eat. So, in the book of Peter, Peter says that there were those who believed that the animals were made to be caught and killed. They were created to be caught and killed and eaten. That's what they believed. And in all of our translations, it sounds like that's what Peter was saying. I agree. Peter was saying, I think animals were made to be caught and killed. But if you read that very carefully, even in the English translations, you'll see that doesn't make any sense. Because then just a verse later, he says, but that's what's going to happen to them. Those who believe this, it's going to happen to them. They're going to get caught and killed. You see, because if you're going to live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. You give, you shall receive. But if you kill, you're going to be killed. If you want to live under that law of Jehovah, you're going to die. It's full of curses. And if you want to kill animals, if you think that's what they were created for, then that's what you were created for. Somebody's going to kill you. See? So, don't expect any of these elite to stop ruling over us until we stop ruling over the animal kingdom and destroying them and eating meat and you know, beating our wives and slapping our children around and deceiving each other in churches, you know, and just like they're deceiving us on commercials on television. So you're deceiving your flock in church by telling them they're worthless pieces of fill in the blank. You're telling them our Father in heaven, who is love, he doesn't love them, and he's gonna be angry and come down here and send everybody to hell. That's the worst form of blasphemy there ever was. That's who Satan is, not our Father in heaven. You won't find anywhere in the New Testament Jesus said, I'm going to send somebody to hell. Never. In the Revelation, Jesus sends the beast and the false prophet and the dragon to hell. See, that's what he did on the cross. He conquered principalities, powers, and dominions, Satan and his demonics. That's what he made hell for the devil and his demons. And so the dragon's going to go there. And that's what Jesus did on that cross. He conquered death. He conquered the law so that you might be free. But Jesus doesn't come and have a big war against human beings and throw innocent little human beings into hell. So yes, there's a hell, and we're in it. And the fire of hell, it just cleanses our soul. Okay, it purges the gold and the silver and makes it better and pure. And it burns off the dross. We all go through this hell. Everybody. Look at Revelation. It says that death and hell gave up those dead in them. We don't stay in there forever. But while we're in that hell, it's simply purging us and purifying us. We learn by the things that we suffer. Jesus Christ learned by the things that he suffered, as it says there in the book of Hebrews. So friends, we just need to think about, you know, every time we complain about someone doing something to us and wondering why our Father in heaven would allow the elite to do this to us, you got to stop and think, why does he allow you to beat your children and kill animals and why did he allow all of this wickedness on the earth? Because we have free will. We're not going to be forced to do what is right. And we're going to be given the opportunity to do whatever we want. And if we do what's wrong, there's consequences. And we go through those consequences, we pay for the consequences, and eventually we learn by the things that we suffer. And we cause suffering and harm to others. But Father in heaven's not partial. He lets everybody do that. You know, the dogs kill dogs. Humans kill deer and beat each other and imprison each other and deceive each other. And the elite rule over us. And there are beings that probably are using the elite too. But eventually, we learn. And we crucify the flesh and the passions thereof. And we reign over the flesh like Jesus did when he rode into Jerusalem on that donkey. It represented his conquering the human carnal nature. And when we can do that, then nobody will be ever ruling over us or abusing us again. So friends, I guess that's all I've really got to say today, and just make this little short video, and see you guys tomorrow. You guys have a great day. It's David Vos signing out.